Hello, my friends. Welcome back to this channel. And today we want to make step 4 about the contemplative prayer. So, what have we already discussed? How to sit in silence, how to use the Holy Word, and what it is about. And we ended with the thought that we just sit on the shore of the river of consciousness and let everything just float by what shows up in our consciousness and try to stay uh, let's say disidentified from it on the shore of this river. So what will show up, of course, are thoughts, and there will be two kinds of thoughts mainly. And the question is, how do we deal with them? So, the first kind of thought is, let's say, quite easy to deal with because that's just fantasies playing out. So, you sit in silence, you focus on your breath and then on the Holy Word, and all of a sudden, these, let's say, pictures of your last vacation show up or whatever it may be. And of course, it's just impossible to not have those thoughts. And it's beautiful to have them, but it's about allowing them and gently letting them flow by and not jump onto the boats, exploring the load, analyzing what is in there or uh, stuff like that, but just allowing these thoughts to show up on the river of consciousness and gently let them flow by without sticking to them. And yeah, it's just a particle of our inner world showing up, and there's nothing wrong about it. This is happening to all of us, even if you are, let's say, on this path for a very long time. It's just what will happen. And this is also true if these, let's say, thoughts get very loud. There's nothing wrong about it. It just happens. And again, it's about allowing that, gently letting the thoughts float by. And here, the Holy Word will be very helpful because if the thoughts get very loud, you just return to the Holy Word and speak it inwardly again and again in order to come into the depth of this silent space within again. And you will see that the thoughts will float by and dissolve after a certain period of time. So, in the end, it's about acceptance, allowing everything to show up and not, let's say, fight those thoughts, push them away, or anything like that, but just allowing the thoughts. Don't go into them, just let them float by and stick to your practice by using the Holy Word. So, this is the first kind of thought. There is another kind which is, let's say, a little bit more complicated to deal with, and these are thoughts with an emotional load, so to speak. So perhaps all of a sudden the image of your boss shines up in your consciousness, and all of a sudden you are reminded of an argument you had with him. So, right in this moment, thunder is roaring outside, so perhaps no coincidence. And it can be that these feelings of anger surface. And this is not so easy to sit with that. So, again, it's about allowing what wants to show up and not jump onto this boat, not analyzing the situation, not clinging to it or anything. And the same is true for the beautiful, let's say, emotional loads, like the image of your last vacation and all the bliss and peace you felt there, because it's not about going into it. It's just about allowing everything to show up and float by. But of course, sometimes there can be quite a pull to these boats, especially when very old and buried things come up after a while of practicing, and that's not so easy to deal with when this happens. And I recommend to just stick to the practice and use these 25 minutes, perhaps twice a day, to allow things to unfold and gently let them float by. If there is something remaining after the practice or keeps coming up in your everyday life, then it could be helpful to go for some help to then analyze things, perhaps find a therapist or a spiritual counsel to talk things through, but not when you sit in silence. This is another setting, and I highly recommend to go for help if it is needed, especially when heavy stuff is showing up, of course. So, and this is even true when you come to the experience of an inner abyss, so to speak, where all of a sudden you feel like you are falling into an experience and there is nothing to hold on to. You should also allow that to happen, because as we know, God is always there to catch you, and He won't put more onto you than you can bear. So you can trust in that, and so allow things to just unfold. It's a very gentle and loving practice, and it's not about fighting anything, not about pushing things away, nothing like that, but it's just about allowing, accepting, and letting the things float by. So since it is starting to rain here and it gets a little loud, perhaps I come to an end. Perhaps the question arises, are there good and or bad times of prayer? And the answer is no. Whatever wants to show up is allowed to show up, and every prayer is beautiful. And every time you sit there, just accept what shows up, and you will get deeper and deeper into a place of acceptance. And and the inner noise will reduce over time, not only in these 25 minutes, because sometimes you just sit there for 5 or 10 minutes and then your inner noise reduces and you really come into peace and silence. But especially over time, when you stick to the practice, the inner noise will reduce intensely, and it will get easier for you to distance yourself from this inner noise. And this is something very beautiful and healing, and that's where the true experience of contemplative prayer begins, so to speak. So last thing, if you are used to other forms of prayer, these are of course very welcome too. You should practice them. But of course, an active prayer, a spoken prayer, is something different than sitting in silence. So my recommendation is to, let's say, stick to this practice on a daily basis, perhaps once or twice a day for 25 minutes. And if there is room enough, you can still commit to your other forms of prayer or service, and this is only helpful, and so this is not the only path to go deeper into faith and spirituality. So this is it for today. I hope these thoughts are helpful. If you like it, give me a thumbs up or subscribe to the channel. And of course, we will go deeper into the details on contemplative prayer in steps 5 to 10. Thank you so much, my friends. Bye-bye.